Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Miami Heat. This movie tells about the revenge of a former military special force who lost his only daughter due to being kidnapped by a mafia gangster group in Miami. Can he save his daughter from the gangsters? Let's find out in Miami Heat. Miami Heat begins by showing the luxurious life at a resort in the city of Miami, full of parties, sexy girls, and abundant wealth. Then the scene changes to the moment when a burly and muscular man calls someone to talk about his racing car business. The man's name is Yuri, a former Special Forces officer of the Russian military and a former personal bodyguard of a United States Secretary of Defense. He was one of the bodyguards of the most powerful crime boss in Moscow. Due to the track record of such a dangerous job, Yuri becomes very protective of his daughter Julia's own business because he has many rivals in the field of business that he is involved in. So he rarely met Julia in person and only communicated on a video call. Julia is currently busy working as a waitress at a nightclub. Due to Julia's sexy body and beautiful face, she is called by a man who owns the agency named Jacob. Jacob admitted that he was doing the casting to find a model. Jacob then offers Julia to be a model in a photo shoot by promising a brilliant modeling career and fantastic pay. Upon hearing this, Julia immediately accepted the offer. Moreover, she had dreamed of becoming a model since she was a child. Elsewhere, a white-haired man named Charles is having a business meeting with a man named Kim. Charles is the boss of the most powerful gangster group in Miami City and plans to run a new highly beneficial illegal business. That night, after Julia came home from work at the bar, she called her father and asked him to celebrate this year's Christmas Eve together. This is because Julia and Yuri have not lived together since the divorce between Yuri and his wife, Max. That was the reason why both of them rarely saw each other. And Yuri was still so busy with his racing car business that he didn't have much time for Julia anymore. After talking for a long time with her father, Julia immediately hung up and promised to call him again tomorrow. The next day, two of Kim's henchmen came to Charles' place to carry out a transaction on an illegal business that they had previously agreed to. But unfortunately, one of Kim's henchmen was attacked by Charles. Charles suddenly stabbed Kim's henchman in the stomach with a knife. Meanwhile, another Kim's henchmen were immediately beaten by Charles's men. Charles was offended and disrespected that Kim had not come to see him in person, then threatened Kim's henchmen to tell Kim to come to see him in person. On the other hand, Yuri, at work, looked worried because he still hadn't got a message from Julia. While Julia, in another place, is doing a photo shoot at a bar with a very sexy and sensual pose. The other girls in the photo shoot were seen wearing very sexy clothes. At the same time, Yuri coincidentally listened to the radio broadcasting news. In the news, it is stated that the government is starting to talk about the city of Miami, which has more and more human trafficking syndicates. This syndicate group trafficked many women into prostitution circles. It is known that the trade syndicate often deceives its victims by promising wealth and fame. They manipulate their victims to make them believe in them. Yuri heard the news and became even more worried about his daughter's safety. He immediately rushed to where Julia worked to ask where she was. One of Julia's co-workers said Julia was last seen out for a photo shoot with an agency, and she looked very drunk when she came back from the photo shoot agency. In fact, during this time, Julia rarely drank until she was very drunk. But Julia's co-workers thought she was drinking to celebrate something and didn't feel the slightest bit suspicious. Yuri, who heard all that, felt something was wrong with his daughter and immediately went to the place of his ex-wife, Max. When he arrives at Max's house, Julia still hasn't returned home. So he and Max try to track Julia's location with GPS. Based on the GPS tracking, Julia was in a bar called Hammond. Max then says that Julia was probably just partying with her friends. But then again, Yuri still wasn't sure his daughter was safe if he hadn't seen it by himself. Yuri immediately went to Hammond to find out where his daughter was. When Yuri arrived at the bar, he immediately looked for Julia's location. But when he was about to enter the room with Julia's GPS signal, several guards blocked him and prohibited him from entering the room. Yuri quickly slammed the guards down one by one and broke the room's door. Yuri found a photo of Julia among the many photos of the girls being trafficked at the bar. He became furious and immediately beat all the guards in that place. Epic fights between Yuri and all the bar guards were unavoidable, and he could easily defeat them all. Because of the big commotion at his bar, Kim came and purposely tricked Yuri until he was off guard so that Kim's henchmen could hit him from behind. Yuri was instantly unconscious and immediately taken to a beach to be beaten until he couldn't move anymore before he was finally drowned in the sea. When Yuri's body had sunk and was barely helpless anymore, he could faintly see his daughter's reflection in the water. Yuri felt that he should not give up because he had to quickly save his beloved daughter. Elsewhere, Julia tried to get out of bed after she had a pretty bad hangover. Shortly after, Kim came to offer Julia a drink. Meanwhile, Yuri managed to survive despite suffering severe injuries. He then went by car from a foreign man and immediately contacted his friend named Louis. Yuri asked Louis to find out all the information about Hammond's bar. Upon further investigation, Hammond's bar turned out to be one of the many places where young girls were trafficked. The act of trafficking is controlled by the most influential gangster group in the city of Miami. On the other hand, Julia and her friend began to feel something was wrong with the agency that hired them. But Julia realized it too late and had to accept that now she and her friend had been trafficked. The scene returns to Yuri and Louis, who come to the house of one of their military friends to collect weapons and ammunition that will later be used against a human trafficking syndicate. Yuri no longer cares about his own safety because he still has to save his daughter. He will continue to search for his daughter even if he has to fight against Miami's most powerful gangster group. That night, Yuri came to where Kim and all his henchmen were. After Yuri managed to kill all of Kim's henchmen with poison gas, he found 2 girls who were victims of human trafficking. So he immediately contacted the authorities to pick up the 2 girls and take them to the hospital. Unfortunately, Yuri couldn't find his own daughter and news from her friend that Yuri is preparing to fight a trade syndicate with Louis. Hearing this, Max immediately realized that her daughter was in danger, and she immediately left her job. On the other hand, Charles and his men named Oliver planned to arrest and attack Yuri, causing his illegal business to suffer huge losses. At the same time, Yuri was preparing himself before facing the entire gang of gangsters who had taken his daughter. Louis advised Yuri not to come alone to the gangsters' place. Louis has just discovered that these gangsters is above the law and has been protected by the governor of the city of Miami for nearly 20 years. Yuri refused because he didn't have much time and needed to save his daughter immediately. That night, Max came to Yuri's place and immediately asked about her daughter's location. Before Yuri could answer, his friend, a former military soldier, came with the henchmen to attack him. Fortunately, Yuri and Max could easily defeat them all. It turned out that the attack that night was part of Charles' plan to kill Yuri before Yuri could find him. The next day, Yuri and Max try to contact Max's police partner who is on duty in the port area to find out where Julia is. However, Max's police partner admitted that they could not enter an area heavily guarded by the mafia. When Yuri and Max were about to leave, the police attacked Max and Yuri instead. They are again attacked by Max's police partner, whom Charles has paid to kill them both. However, Yuri and Max managed to survive the attack and Max's partners were forced to be killed during the shootout. After knowing that Yuri could still survive any attack they planned, Oliver advised Charles to release Julia before it was too late. Oliver felt that Yuri wouldn't stop messing around until he got his daughter back. But Charles still didn't want to let Julia go. He felt that with the power and wealth he had, he would not be crushed by the actions of just one person. Max and Yuri came to the port where human trafficking occurred in the evening, and they managed to defeat all of Charles's henchmen with their abilities and tactics. After that, Yuri had to face Oliver, and a fierce battle between the two finally happened. Yuri had a hard time fighting Oliver because Oliver's body was much bigger than his body, but Yuri managed to beat Oliver. Unfortunately, Max was caught by Charles and taken to another place at the same time. Charles and the rest of his henchmen arrived at his hiding place and immediately took Julia with him. Charles still thought that Yuri would never find him, but his assumptions were again wrong. Yuri and Louis managed to find Charles' hiding place and began to kill his henchmen one by one. The battle between Louis and Yuri with Charles's henchmen was quite fierce. Even though Yuri and Louis were alone, they could defeat all of Charles' henchmen. After Yuri managed to get past all of Charles' henchmen, he finally could find the location of Charles and his daughter. Charles threatens Yuri to kill Julia if Yuri doesn't let him go. However, Yuri and Julia managed to work together, and Charles was shot and killed. After Julia managed to survive, she immediately hugged her father. Yuri, Max and Julia reunite on Christmas Eve and celebrate Christmas together. Julia's wish has been successfully fulfilled by Yuri. The moral that can be learned from this movie is, power and wealth can never protect against any crime, and a father's love will never be replaced by anything.